computer. Well,
Yeah.
okay. So thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this new episode of In This Together with me, your host, but of course, my deep guest here, Kevin Palmieri here, CFO and founder and co-host of Next Level University, one of the global top 100 self-improvement podcasts with more than 1,100 episodes. Is right, Kevin?
That is right, my friend. Yep.
Definitely. With more than 650,000 listen in over, I think, 125 countries. Is it right, Kevin?
That is right.
That's amazing, man. It's so great to have you here. Thank you for being here, Kevin. It's my pleasure. And, I was thinking that when you're doing podcasting, you want to really connect with other people in order to get the best out of them. It's something deeper, a connection, a bond that is developed throughout this, I think, this great usage of voice. We have this amazing tool, which is our voice, to convey informations, and convey emotions, deep emotions. So thank you for being here, Kevin. And I gotta say, my first question is, as always, how are you feeling today? How are you feeling now in 2022 after a lot of personal troubles and personal development even? How are you feeling today?
I am feeling great. I'm a little bit overwhelmed today because it's been a long week. I mean, we're only 11 days into the month. It's been a long month, but I would say all things considered, I am the most fulfilled, the most in love, and the most quote unquote successful I've ever been. So I would say I'm doing very well. And thank you for the wonderful intro. I appreciate it very much. And thank you for the energy as well. I like it. It's infectious.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Kevin. And that's beautiful, because I always try to start, even if you're my second guest. So of course it's a little premature to say, but it's always amazing to have a feeling of how the the person you're interviewing is. So how are you doing now? It's not about, okay, well, you have a lot of accomplishment, of course, but how are you feeling today? That's the first question that I always think about, and so thank you for being. And I think just this first sentence that you gave is already, really important for the audience, because you talked about fulfillment. And when you feel fulfilled, I think it's something really deeper that goes beyond, everything that you can imagine of just, personal health, body health and emotional health. It's all about the whole equation, it's all about the entireness, the wholeness of the thing. So now I want you to clue you in a little bit on your story, because I'm so fascinated by it. And I know how struggle works a little bit. And for what I've read, I want you to start from the very rock bottom moment, if you can. And because I think my audience would be so damn interested in how do you felt in that moment, how you felt in that moment in which you were like gazing at the abyss, you're staring at the profoundness of life. Even, I think, one of the most brutal things to do, thinking about taking your own life. That's something so damn struggling if you think about that. So I want you to, delve us into this problem. And how could you find not only strength, but, it's something deeper than strength, I think. There's no strength. It's something much more connected with your inner self, your core. So what was that? What was this all about?
Yeah, I was 25 years old and I went through a breakup. And when I went through this breakup, it made me think to myself, who could ever love me? I'm insecure, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I'm scarce, I'm afraid of everything. Who could ever love Kevin, this version of Kevin? And here's the problem. I checked in with that. I reflected on that. I became aware of that. But my next thought was, I think I probably need to go make more money. Because if I go make more money, all these problems are going to go away. And I was convinced of that. I was convinced that more money meant less problems. So that next year started. I got a promotion at the company I was working for, and I became a foreman. And what I was doing for work was I was in the weatherization industry. All that means is we would go into buildings and we would make them more energy efficient. I worked for the state, basically. We used to get contracts through the state. So I made anywhere from $60 to $120 an hour, depending on where I was working. I like it. Good money. Happy Kevin. So that year I said, I'm going to make the most money I've ever made, because I think if I make more money, I'll have less problems. I'll have more self-love. I'll feel more fulfilled. I'll be less self-conscious, less insecure. So I just worked really, really, really hard that year. And if you fast forward to the end of that year, I had been on the road for 10 months out of the 12 months. Most of the contracts we got were out of state. So I lived in Massachusetts, or actually lived in New Hampshire at the time. Most of our work was in New Jersey in the United States, which is like 6 hours away. So I would pack up on Sunday. I drive down to the hotel on Sunday night. Monday through Friday, I'd work in New Jersey. Friday night after work, I'd get in the van and we'd drive home 6 hours. And that was my life for 10 months out of the 12 months. But we got to the end of the year. I opened my final pay stub and I made $100,000, and that was my goal. And I felt good for all of 5-10 minutes. And I realized that in that moment, I have spent most of my life, definitely that previous year, living unconsciously, just going through the motions, not really knowing why I was doing what I was doing. The opposite of unconscious is hyperconscious. So I started a podcast called the Hyperconscious Podcast. I fell in love with podcasting, and I literally stopped caring about my job overnight because I knew I didn't want the results that the job was going to bring me. I didn't care about making a bunch of money that way anymore. I didn't want to do it. So as that year starts, I start calling out of work. I'm leaving the job early. I'm showing up late. I just do not care. I do not care about my job. I don't care about it. I know I'm not going to be there forever, but I don't know what to do. I'm making really good money, and I don't believe I'm going to be able to make that kind of money anywhere else, really. So I just kept pushing, and I'm not sleeping, and I'm staying up 24 hours routinely, and I'm just burning myself out. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And I didn't know if there was a way out. I just felt very trapped. The rock bottom basement moment for me was I woke up in a hotel room in New Jersey. It was probably 5:15 in the morning. I sat up, I slid to the edge of the bed. I was lacing up my work boots, and I had done this 1,000 times. But that morning, something was different. It was like there was 10 televisions on in my head at the same time, and every single one was on a different station. One station saying, "You're stuck here forever. I know you want to leave, but you're never going to make this money again. You're stuck." Another one is saying, "If you do have the courage to leave, what are your friends going to say? They all look up to you. You make a lot of money. What is your family going to say? Your family's very proud of everything you've accomplished. What are they going to say?" And the loudest voice for me, the loudest TV station was, "Do you really think you're going to leave this job and then go be a podcaster? Is that really how this is going to work for you?" And I didn't believe that at all. And in that moment, I felt that if I was to take my life, I would take my problems with me. Now, one of the things I talk about often, because I think it's super important, is the quality of the people around you. I sent a message to my friend at the time, who is now my business partner and co-host and co-founder, Alan. I texted him and I said, "Hey, Alan, I'm really struggling with mental health right now. I'm having these dark thoughts. I feel stuck. I feel trapped." I felt safe enough to tell him the truth. And he gave me something that I don't know that many people could have given me. He gave me permission to make a different decision. He said, "Kev, so much has changed for you over the last year or so when it comes to your awareness, but your environments are all the same. I think it's time for you to change your environment." And then I ended up leaving that job 3 or 4 months later based on that advice, based on that support, based on the fact that I had somebody believe in a brighter future for me. And I ended up becoming a full-time entrepreneur and chasing this dream. Now, in the beginning, it was brutal. I went from making 6 figures to making nothing. Couldn't afford Christmas presents for my girlfriend. I could barely afford to pay rent. My car broke. I couldn't fix it. It was brutal. But it's interesting how, although I was making less money and I was quote unquote less successful, I was more fulfilled because I was doing something that I believed in, and I was doing something for impact, not profitability. So even though I was quote unquote broker than I had ever been, I was still more fulfilled. Doesn't mean I was happier. It doesn't mean I was filled with more pleasure. It means that I felt like I was on purpose more than I ever had. And that was a very addictive feeling that I was afraid of losing.
Well, I gotta say, Kevin, that's something so powerful. I have well, I've been taking notes, because I wanna be so sure about understanding fully and grasping fully what you've been through. It's a hard work, and I think everything started from this need for money. I think it's something so, and I can relate to that, man. I can tell you, it's a constant struggle for me just to think about that. Currently, I'm trying to get my head around how could I make my life better. And I know it sounds rhetorical, or like a hoo-hoo statement, so, oh, I just want, but really, I'm trying to get my head around, no, not what's the purpose in life, but what I really want to do in order to be fulfilled and fully conscious of my potentiality and my strength as a person.
Mm.
So, and I think you touched a very interesting point, which is not only, of course, the importance of money related to, of course, everything that we do in life is related to money. And those people who think, or they try to tell to other people, that money is not important, that's BS to me. That's totally BS. But there's a big but in there. Because, the quality of people, you said, you talked about the quality of people that surround yourself. And it's something so incredibly powerful to me, because I'm from a country, which is Italy, which is a country that tend to be conservative. It's not it's not something generic or stereotypical, but we kind of have this kind of thing. Italy is good. We eat well, we drink well, blah blah blah. Okay, but then I was feeling like pressed, compressed into, let's say, an uncomfortable zone. When you feel impressed in something that you're not belong to, you're not made for that. And so that was, I was referring to the quality of people, because getting out from my home country helped me a lot with that. Because when you're stable in your environment, your own city, when you met the same old friend, which are good, incredibly good, absolutely important, but they're all the same. They're not changing. They're not pushing around some new thoughts, new theories, let's say, new push towards something else, And I think, to me, what I felt from your story, it's, the quality of people gave you drive to become something better and to pursue something much deeper than just merely money. Money is important, but podcasting gave me something else. Gave me a reason to get to others by utilizing my voice and my strengths, and you wouldn't feel safe. Is it right? Because you wouldn't feel safe mostly, I think, in the beginning, when you don't have safety, you don't have security about nothing, and that's so great. And what about, I gotta say, because I'm so curious about that. How would you say that you combat, or let's say, I don't want to use combat, but how do you cope with anxiety and fear, mostly? Because I think those are two of the greatest dimension in which, unfortunately, men and women, of course, so let's say human beings, tend to to get intricate in, and to get trapped in anxiety, and this spiral, the spiral of anxiety that is basically empowering fear, and fearing, which is empowering anxiety. What do you think about that? How did you cope with that?
Yeah, I had this very unique perspective that if I allowed my fears to control my life, I would only get as far as my fears let me. And I know that sounds very simple, but I really thought of it as, okay, my fears are the fence. And there's a bunch of things on the other side of that fence, but I'm never going to get to see them unless I get over that fence, unless I face that fear. So what happened for me was I had somebody that pushed me. Alan pushed me. I'll never forget one of the things I did that scared me the most in the beginning is Alan said, "Hey, we got invited to this party on a private island." And I was like, "What? What do you mean?" He's like, "Yeah, it's down at the Cape Cod in Massachusetts. It's a really nice place. There's like this private island where we got invited. It's a really nice house. It's like a networking event." And I remember thinking, like, I'm afraid I don't want to do that. I'm afraid I don't want to do that. But Alan kept pushing me. He said, "Kev, you never know. You might meet somebody here. We might meet somebody who's going to help us in the podcast. You never know." So I had this very interesting feeling when I'm walking into this house and I'm so afraid. I'm so afraid. I'm so afraid. But I ask myself, well, what's the worst that can happen? I mean, really, the worst that can happen is I have an uncomfortable experience or conversation with somebody. My life is not at risk here. Worst case scenario, I get embarrassed and I get insecure. And I started having those conversations with myself about the worst case scenario is things go wrong, but it's probably not as wrong as I think. So I think what happens is we have to think of it from, if you think of it as a bullseye, in the center of your bullseye, you have your comfort zone. The next ring, you have your learning zone. And then the last ring on the very outside, you have your anxiety zone. Many of us are living in comfort. And then when we think of fear, we think of something that's in our anxiety zone, not our learning zone. So this is the example I use. I had a young lady reach out to me and she said, "I want to be a speaker." And I said, "Awesome. We got to get you speaking." I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, and I want you to think of this from the comfort, learning, and anxiety zone. On a scale of 1 to 10, how outside of your comfort zone is it for you to go give a speech on YouTube live, just a live YouTube speech, live Facebook Live? How far outside of your comfort zone? And she's like, "That's like a 12 out of 10. I am terrified, too much." Okay, let's not do that. On a scale of 1 to 10, how far outside of your comfort zone is it for you to do a video on your cell phone and show nobody? And she said, "That's like a 0. That's in the comfort zone." Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, how far outside of your comfort zone is it for you to record a video and send it to me only, somebody you trust, somebody you know? She said, "It's probably like a 5 or a 6. I said, "That's exactly what you should do." It's not something that's going to put you into the anxiety zone where you're so afraid you won't do it. And if you do it and it ends up going wrong, it breaks you mentally and it breaks your spirit and you get disheartened. But it's something that's far enough outside of your comfort zone where you're actually putting some skin in the game, where things could go wrong here and things might get a little weird. She sent me the video. It went very good. And that's now a level of proof that she has where next time she's afraid, she can say, "Well, I did this last time. I can do a little bit more. I can do a little bit more." So I think for a lot of people, what they're doing is they're saying, my comfort zone is here. They look at something that they shouldn't be doing anyway. If you're afraid of speaking, the last thing you should do is get on stage. You should start recording videos to yourself. You can have a podcast where you talk to yourself. You can do your Instagram stories. You can do Facebook Lives down the road. What we do is we say, "I am so afraid of this, I could never do it." Not, "I am so afraid of this. What's level 1 of that?" Oh, recording a video to myself. So I think that's what I did is I try to figure out, okay, what am I most afraid of? All right, what's level 1 of that? What's level 2 of that? What's level 3? I think a lot of us, myself included in the beginning, from level 1 to level 10. And that's probably just too much of a jump for most people.
Well, that's it's fantastic, because I love this concept of rings, because it reminds me of the famous golden circle, the theory from Simon Sinek, and start with why. So it's amazing, how you can conceive this, let's say, this bullseye, and I think it's very much true. And I usually think, when you have the possibility to really gaze, and start to admiring what's the worst that can happen, just like you did when you were invited in Cape Cod, I think you went with this kind of thought, you were terrified. I mean, I think what I felt was just terror, terror, anxiety, terrible fear of probably failing in doing. I think I'm probably getting into a sort of bad, not relationship, romantic relationship, but a relationship with others, just being embarrassed or feeling insecure in front of others. And I think, which is one of the most struggling thing that many people have, and so And so conceptualizing this thing, and having to see actually, or writing down, for example, write down what's the worst that can happen, and you had that in your mind. You didn't have to write it down, but still you had it. I said, well, what's the worst that can happen here in Cape Cod? Well, I don't know. I think probably I'm going to get embarrassed by a few people, or I'm going to get insecure about whatever, what I'm wearing or what I'm saying, whatever the fuck it is. But there's even another part, there's another part. So what if, I always love, the thing of the concept of what if from David Goggins, what if, what if it can get worse, but what if it goes well?
Yeah.
What if it goes well? What if I met someone, or I will meet someone who really can enhance my podcasting, or just give me an advice, for whatever purpose, even, even technicalities, or how can you set up, the microphone, or just the whole view. It's an amazing thing. And I think you had a great timing doing that. And I think you overcame whatever anxiety I think most of the people, you're not hiding anxiety, but you're trying to get the best out of it. And I think in that process, what you've been trying to do with this new, incredible, I would say, next level university, please, guys, check it out, because it's amazing. It's amazing content with more than, I don't know even how to write it down. 1,100. It's like Joe Rogan style, something like that.
We're trying.
So congratulations, man. It's amazing. So check it out, please, guys. It's an amazing site and website when you can have the best out of your life, but still, I think you're not hiding your anxiety, but still you're trying to get the best out of the possible. It's a great way. It's a great tool that we have at our disposal. I always think about anxiety as not as a weakness, but rather as a powerful tool, as a powerful weapon that we have, and that can spur us, in a way to overcome our deepest and darkest fears. I think.
Can I add to what we were saying?
You have to. Please do.
So I read this in a book. I don't remember what book it was, so I can't give credit, but this is what I started doing shortly after that. It was, what's the best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario? And what's the most likely scenario? And then I tried to think of it, because it's very hard, because you think, okay, it's like, well, the worst case scenario is going to happen every time. The worst case scenario is usually worse than I think. Imagine if you were giving that advice to somebody else. So if somebody came to me and said, hey, I got invited to this networking event on a private island, I'm so afraid. I would say, all right, what's the best case scenario? Well, the best case scenario is I meet somebody who changes my life forever. Okay. What's the worst case scenario? I get kidnapped and somebody takes me away and I get drowned in the ocean. Okay. What's the most likely scenario? Nothing really happens. I don't meet anybody who changes my life, but I face my fear. All right, cool. That's probably what's going to happen. And then if we think about it, even the worst case scenario most likely isn't going to happen. That's not,
and it's not that realistic. Scary.
It's
apart
not that
from dying, of course. Yeah.
But yeah.
Because, okay.
But the odds of that happening are so incredibly low. Could it happen? Sure. But that happens
Definitely.
every time you get on a plane too. The best case scenario, I hate planes. Best case scenario, we fly somewhere and I never forget it. Worst case scenario, there's some sort of tragedy. Most likely scenario, I fly somewhere and I never forget it. That's the most likely scenario.
That's a beautiful way to conceptualize it. And I think it's pretty outstanding how our brain, I'm so damn fascinated by our brain, because, we tend to always rely on this concept about, our brain is doing us bad. We're getting, let's say, fucked. There's a lot of, even in this personal development environment, I don't know, because you're much more deeply involved than I am, because I'm a newbie in this, so it's I don't really consider myself a personal development. I just talk about whatever comes to my mind, and of course, from my little experience, I want to help people with my experience, and that's where it is. But many people are trying just to frame this as, my brain is making me do this, or or you're just trying to get things done and you get stuck and you say, oh no, I have to move on, I have to move on, I have to move on. And even, I don't know, I want you, I want a really a consideration from you, you know, it's something from a real personal developer that had amazing time, you know, helping people out, you know, had public events, you gave a lot of speeches, more than, I think, more than 100 speeches, you know, publicly with the Next Level University, and of course even I think by yourself and with your peers or your collaborators. But what do you think about this whole industry? I mean, don't you think that there are some weaknesses in this kind of environment? You know, I'm starting to realize that, you know, the bio-individuality of the things are very important. You know, we cannot, I cannot say to you, well, Kevin, you know, you have to start your day at 5 a.m. because otherwise you're I don't know, you're just a lazy man. But that's completely wrong. It's completely wrong, you know? And so just rather tell me what you think about this whole industry and how it's developing itself. You know, it's just for yourself giving to the right direction, or we can have something else, you know, we can manage to do something better.
I think the industry as a whole is focused on improvement. I do think the industry as a whole is positive, but I do believe, just like any other industry, there are people who are in this not based on a place of helping, they're based on a place of profiting. And I think it's like that in every industry. But I think the interesting thing is, to your point, everybody has their own survivor's bias, AKA what's worked for me is usually the advice I'm going to give if I don't study what has worked for other people, or I don't understand why what has worked for me actually worked. So I think, to your point, there's a lot of people out there saying, I get up at 5 a.m. Myself, I get up at 4:30 usually. But I try not to give that advice to people because I understand I like mornings better than I like evenings. I am more productive in the morning than I am at night. Not everybody is that way. I think that we have to understand at a fairly deep level that, yes, what we do might work for us, but it's the fundamental of why we do what we do, not necessarily the modality.
Exactly.
What does that mean? I get up early because it serves me in the best way. Other people work really, really late because it serves them in the best way. It's about finding when you can be the most productive, not get up as early as humanly possible. But if you only understand layer one, to your point, you're soft if you don't get up at 5 a.m. That's not true. That's not true. It's just not. Some people operate better in the morning. Sure. Some people operate better in the evening. Sure. As long as you're getting the right amount of sleep, I don't care what you're doing.
Definitely.
I'm more focused on sustainability. What is sustainable for you is different than what's sustainable for me. I don't want you to get up at 5 a.m. If you want to get up at 5, get up at 5. If you want to sleep till 8, sleep till 8. Just understand that as long as you're being as productive, quote unquote, and learning as much as you can while you're awake, while you're living, while you're awake, then that's good. You got to be very careful. Even with me, you have to be very careful with the advice that you take from me because it's based on my experience and my study of other human beings. It might not apply to you 100%. It might not, right? That's very important. So yeah, to your point, I think a lot of people are trying to do good by giving advice based on what's worked for them, but it's not a cookie cutter. Self-improvement is for self. Personal development is personal. It's going to require you to try a bunch of different things and say, you know what, that didn't work for me in the same way that I thought it was going to, or it didn't work for me in the way that it worked for this other person. And that's okay.
Well, that's very good. Yeah, because, you know, I think we always try to rationalize over this thing, you know, all the time. We tend to say, and I heard, unfortunately, I heard many people say, well, I cannot, I just made it an example, you know, out of thin air, you know, just because of, you know, 5 a.m. is always a good example to start by, you know, but but the fact is that, you know, many people say, I can do that. I cannot do that because, you know, and I love, you know, I've been talking a lot about, you know, the work by Matthew Walker, PhD, Why We Sleep, and so I love how he framed the chronotype thing. So of course you seem to have a very good bias towards morning log, you say morning type rather than an evening type. So but it's so individual and so individualistic. So that's why I'm just trying to framing this in another way. So you don't have to, you're not forced to get up at 5 in order to be productive or in order to be successful. You can do whatever you want. But of course, you have to keep in mind that you have to be very cognizant of the fact that couldn't be, it's not because of laziness, just you don't want to, mistake your laziness with your, for example, chronotype, or you just wandering around, the fact that maybe you want just to sleep more in order to get a more successful and a more productive day. But yeah, that was for me a very good point. But now I want you to say something really important, because you're a coach too. So you're having to do all the time with people. So if I were your client, okay, one of your client, or I'm just one of your friend, and I'm starting saying I'm having troubles. I'm having a lot of troubles, personal troubles, maybe with the relationship. Usually, it's most common. I'm having trouble with work, related to job, occupation, or whatever it is. And of course, the physical health, huge problem, massive problem. I think it's one of the greatest problems that we have right now, obesity epidemic, opioid crisis, mostly in America, so in the United States, but even I think in Europe, where I'm right now, when I'm saying, I think it's developing quite early. So I don't want you to give me the best advice you can, because of course, because of the sake of the conversation that we just had, you cannot just say, oh, well, there's a huge advice, but what would it be your approach to a kind of person that seek help from your person, from your professional career, and mostly, I think, even motivated and connected with your own story, with your own story. So how can I get to improve myself in order to get to your point, or, to that success from the rock bottom to, overcoming anxiety, fears, and succeed something good and meaningful in life?
Yeah, I think it starts from a place of asking questions. I think good coaches are good questioners. I had a conversation with somebody very close to me recently. We were sitting outside by the fire. We had a great night. We hung out, we got pizza, had a few drinks, and this person was kind of venting to me. And we were talking about the mentors and business and relationships and all that. And I just started asking questions. And this person was talking about their mentors. And I said, just simple question. I said, take your time on this. Just from my understanding, have you ever been impressed by a mentor as you got to know them better? And I just sat. Let's just see what happens here. And this person went through their answer, right? And they said, no, not really. Usually I'm very excited in the beginning because my expectations of what they know are off. And I said, all right, cool. Then I go into, okay, so our awareness now is on a similar level. You and I realize that oftentimes you're let down by mentors. Here's why. The closer you get to somebody, the closer you get to the truth. Is that fair? Yeah, no, that definitely resonates. Okay. Well, here's why at a deeper level. Because when you get to know somebody, you get to understand their core values, you get to understand their core beliefs, and you get to understand their core aspirations. And we find out whether or not those are actually aligned. We find out whether or not they're actually what we thought they were. When you get closer to somebody, you get closer to the truth. So in that conversation, my number one goal is to get that person raise their awareness to what the root cause actually is. It's the root cause that we need to shift. That's why coaching is so hard. That's why it's very hard to impact 50 people at the same time, because the root cause usually isn't the same. Even in a relationship, I'm having relationship issues. Okay, what do they look like? Well, my partner and I aren't on the same page and we're having arguments more. Okay, when did that start? Okay, after this, all right. Have you been feeling as vulnerable? Have you felt as safe? Has there been as much intimacy? Have the conversations been flowing? I just want to get to the root cause, because usually the root cause isn't what we think it is. And this is the analogy I use. I'm a big gym goer. I love heavy squats. I love working on my legs, leg day. For a long time, I was having left knee pain. So in my mind, there's something wrong with my left knee. I buy a physical therapy book, and it talks about the fact that if you do this test and you can't put your knee up against the wall when it's this test to test for ankle mobility.
Yeah.
My right ankle is way too tight. My right ankle is creating my left knee problems. That is awareness. The awareness that the root cause is not what I thought it was. Now, through awareness, I can take responsibility to address the issue, and then I can be consistent with addressing that issue. That's what a good coach does. But it's based on my awareness must be higher. As a podcast coach, my awareness is higher. So I can address the root cause and then give you the tactics. So to your point, yeah, it all depends on what the person is going through. You can only coach to the level of your awareness. And you can only coach to the level of your awareness and specificity in a given time frame with somebody behind the scenes. It's very hard to coach multiple people at the same time because everybody has a different, the root cause is different.
Definitely. From your own experience, do you think that people tend to be aware of their condition or not?
No, because usually there has to be a reason to become aware. That's why you hear, for me, right? I went through a massive amount of pain. Then my growth started really compounding. Why? Because I had necessity to look in the mirror and say, wait, what is it about me? Where am I not living up to my potential? I started asking myself questions. So for most people, I think that there has to be some sort of necessity that makes them question their awareness. And when you question your awareness and you set a new goal, you have to change your awareness and you have to change your results. So no, I don't think most people have a reason to question their awareness. There has to be some sort of necessity to get them to do that. Again, myself included.
Yeah, that's difficult to me, Kevin, because I don't think we should have the necessity of, a trauma or a traumatic experience. And that's unfortunately what happens. And it happened even to me. Yeah. I'm not going to say, oh, I'm the best, I'm a warrior, or, BS like that. No, absolutely not. But from my perspective, why should people have to wait until something bad happened? Why should you wait, to, let's say, start losing weight, for example, massive problem, or, for example, to get into a constructive, let's say, not constructive relationship, but at least a constructive discussion with your partner, for example? What do you have to wait until you have a fight, or you just throw punch in the air with that, and that spirals down into aggression and harassment and all that connected to it? Why do we have to be so reactive instead of being proactive and coming to, as you were saying, to the root cause of the problem before let's say it implodes in something so damn difficult to handle? Because it's always, if you're trying to, for example, to put off a little fire, it's a thing, but if you try to put off an entire forest which is going burn down to hell or something like that, that's even much more difficult, to do it. That's absolutely normal. So why do people struggle so much with having, why do you think that is? Why is it so difficult to think? It's about thinking. I believe I think too much. But why do you don't think that much?
I would argue that
resonates to you,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I'm struggling with that. Many times you say, why do I think so much? And I see people that don't think about, their health or relationships or occupation or jobs or whatever. Why people don't think that much? What do you think it
I
is?
I had a partner in the past, somebody I was dating. She literally said, "You think too much," and that's when I realized it wasn't meant to be. I don't think too much. I think at the level that my goals require. I think that's why, because you think and you learn and you understand to the level of the necessity that you have in your life. I don't know anything about cars because I don't have to. That's not my occupation. Now, if I decided I wanted to be the best damn mechanic on the planet, I would have to go learn everything, everything. And I'd have to change my life completely. I'd have to change the content I consume. I'd have to change everything. Everything would have to change. I believe one of the reasons is because people aren't clear on their goals. The reason that you set a goal is not to accomplish the goal. It's to become the type of person who's capable of accomplishing the goal. I would argue that in some way, shape, or form, your goals require you to think more than the quote unquote average person. 100% same for me. That's why I think of weird stuff. I think of it all the time. I love it.
Yeah,
But
beautiful.
but
Beautiful
that's
way to frame it.
that's the
Beautiful way to frame it.
goals. It's the goals. So I would argue, and I don't know what your goals are, but you're either thinking enough or you're actually not thinking enough to get to where you want to get to. Because if you were thinking enough, you'd be closer to where you want to get. And again, I don't know where that
Definitely.
is.
That's very interesting. I'm kind of fascinated by all this whole thing about thinking. I'm a huge believer in thinking. I'm a huge believer in the capabilities of our mind to get us out the best of our life. I'm a firmly believer in growth mindset, of course. And I'm a huge believer in Carol Dweck's work, in mindset, of course. It's been a fascinating reading and amazing mind-opening, eye-opening sort of experience. But still, do you think that many people can have that potential, that power to overcome all these constant fears, even, that are, let's say, push them out from social media and fear? I think one of the fear, I don't know if you agree with that, but one of the greatest fear that right now is mounting over and adding up and piling up is this fear of getting socially accepted. And so rather than pursuing something you really want to, you're just pursuing someone else's desire to want you to be, in order to get to a standpoint. So let's say, Kevin, you want to be a podcaster. Great. But society wants you to have, I don't know, a medical doctor degree, or I don't know what shit, people wants you to do. But in order to get to that point, to be socially accepted, then I have to do it. And that's something to me that it's not making any sense. So tell me your opinion about that.
Yeah, I think social media has just really compounded the fact that we all want to belong. We all have the human need of belonging. The problem with social media particularly is everybody looks better than they actually are. Therefore, the belongingness, it's harder to get. I don't belong in this group because I don't have a Mercedes, or I don't have a mansion, or I'm not in Cabo. I'm not traveling all over the world. I don't have six-pack abs, whatever it is. I think social media has just changed the expectation of what the human experience is actually like. And that's why it's very dangerous, and you got to be very, very, very careful. I think that what we have to do, and this is a very, very hard thing, we have to understand that judgment is running us all to some degree. Maybe it's not judgment of social media. Maybe it's judgment of family, a partner, whatever it may be. We're all dealing with judgment. And I think we're all afraid of judgment in some way, shape, or form. I really do. I don't know how to fix that other than the fact that, very much what I said before, I think you have to get judged in small bouts. Again, don't go get judged at a level 10 out of 10. Go get judged at a level 1 out of 10. Something very, very small. And it's simple. Something along the lines of this. This is always my example. When you're walking down a hallway, when you're walking down the aisle at a supermarket, I want you to look into the eyes of the person walking by you and just hold eye contact. That's it. Simple. That's all you got to do in the beginning.
That's
because it's
so incredibly powerful.
and it
Please,
sucks.
Kevin, say it again out loud. Please repeat that.
When you're walking down a hallway and you have that awkward moment of, oh, this person's walking down the hallway at the same time. Same thing goes for an aisle at the grocery store. Make eye contact with the person and just hold it. It's uncomfortable because you're thinking, what is this person thinking? What is this person thinking? Something that simple is a great place for you to start getting outside of your comfort zone. That's really all it is. It's your fear of judgment has a certain set point. What's just beyond that set point? This is one of the things, going back to why the self-improvement industry is dangerous, because some people will say, you shouldn't care what anybody thinks. I understand what you're saying, but it's very blanket statement. Most people will never get to the place where they don't care what anybody thinks. I am a public, quote unquote, a public figure, 1,000 episodes. I care what people think more than I should, but it's less than it used to be. And that's the measure that I'm trying to work on. So yeah, everything is baby steps. Fear chasing, getting okay with judgment, public speaking, everything is baby steps. And you just have to figure out, where am I crawling and where can I start walking? And I think it's that forever. Eventually that walk turns to a run. Eventually that run turns to a sprint. Eventually that sprint gets faster. And then it's just this constant progression.
Wow, that was beautiful, Kevin. Thank you for sharing
friend.
this with
Of
us
course.
and with me particularly, because I think every time we struggle for getting we want the big, the big prey. We don't hunt for rats and shit like that. We want hunt down the lion, or the zebra or whatever, the elephant, and we're not chasing the little things, the baby steps in life. And I think this is so crucial. And you touched down on a point which is, to me, incredibly important, which is eye contact. I'm a huge believer of reading body language, and this is the tiniest part we can ever imagine, but what you said is exactly what people should strive for on a daily basis. Trying to get that uncomfortable look for just like, how was that? Like 3 seconds, 2 seconds and a half, whatever the fuck it is. That's, to me, it's mind boggling, because that's just to your self-awareness, what that gaze, for example, into another people's eyes, or for example, to another girl or man or women or whoever, this is just making you a little bit more, conscious of yourself. I'm saying I can do it. I'm not scared. I'm not looking away. I'm not looking down. I'm not looking up. I'm looking directly at you. And that's, to me, it's thank you for sharing that, Kevin, because it's amazing. I love that. I love that, how you can really point that out, and thank you for doing on my behalf, as it were.
Of course.
And yes, it's everything's so great about this new development. But I want you to talk about a little bit. I can see beautiful pictures behind you. Beautiful pictures, amazing. So tell me a little bit of how you developed yourself, even from, if you want to, of course, sharing with us a little bit of your personal life. How that is changing, has changed throughout the whole, the whole line of your life, but even before the rock bottom. I don't want you always to point that out, focus on the real bad, deep, dark moments of your life. Just how's that changed? Because you frame your mind in a total different way. Here you were pursuing money, probably, I don't know if fame. I don't know if you really wanted to. No, it wasn't fame. So let's say money. Okay, let's say money. And now you're at a total different point, in which you're striving for getting the best out of people. How's that? Let's say, how's that interplay? We have this line. how is that let's say evolved throughout your life with your, let's say, relational standpoint?
Mm.
What what's happened, what's happened there?
Yeah. I think one of the unique things that's happened is I try to take ownership. I know that one of the things that happened to me early in life is anytime I had a breakup or anything like that, my immediate thought was ego and, oh, this person is crazy and I'm the best. Like, it's not my fault. This didn't go off the rails because of me. One of the biggest keys to my relationship, and again, my wife and I have arguments just like anybody else. We just try to get back to connect it as quick as humanly possible. I try to take as much ownership as possible. Like, I need to get better. That's my go-to, is I need to get better. Now, again, that's a fine line, and you have to make sure that your self-worth and your self-belief accept that. But that's my go-to now, is I can get better. I must get better in order to get the results I want out of this relationship. Same for my wife. She has to get better with her communication and all that. I think the biggest change is the fact that I understand how moldable I am. If I'm not getting a result I want, odds are I'm not doing the right things yet, or time just hasn't caught up. So there's a lot that I can put into getting better at certain things. I think that's a very important thing. This is the other thing too. In the beginning of my life, I wanted the results first. I wanted to have the best of this, the best of this, the best of this. Now I have a deep understanding that there's a triangle to success, fulfillment, and results. It's mastery, it's impact, and then it's profitability. A lot of people care about profitability, but they're not mastering their craft. A lot of people care about profitability, but they're not impacting enough people to become profitable. That's the understanding that I have now. The better I get as a podcaster, the more people I can ultimately impact, the more money I can ultimately make. There I can do more mastery, more impact, more profitability. I try to live that with everything in my life. The better man I become, the more people I can impact, the different ways I can impact my wife. And then on the end of that, I will get profitability, AKA a very healthy, fulfilling, amazing relationship. But it all starts from getting really good at something in everything. In everything. When it comes to fitness, master fitness, understand my body, understand my nutrients, understand the calories, understand mobility, impact. I can impact through having really, really good workouts. And the profitability on the end is a very healthy body, a capable body. It goes that way for everything. So now I understand that the outputs we want are years in the making based on the inputs that we're putting in. But a lot of us focus on, I want a Mercedes, not I want to be intelligent enough to impact so many people that I can get a Mercedes. Two different lives. So now I understand that at the end of the day, I have to pour more into me than anything else. I am going to get the results, but it's not me. It's who I become, what I learn, how many people I impact. That's ultimately going to get me that.
That's beautiful. Because this triangle, I think most of the people, and even myself sometimes, we tend to just watch to one facet of that
Yeah.
triangle. We seek out for profitability, for example. Many people just try to seek out money and more money. And from the other end, you're trying to, sometimes you want to develop some sort of mastery, but you kind of misunderstand the whole picture. You can see the bigger picture, and so you're mastering yourself, but you're not putting too much emphasis on the other 2 points. There are 2 facets of that triangle. So that's to me, it's the most scary thing. Even sometimes, it's scary to me, because it's not that easy, because when you're just have to focus, for example, on one point, it's much easier, but handle 3 different points, that's totally another different beast,
Yeah.
And I want you, but right now it's you said something that really struck me in the beginning of this, let's say, this ultimate point about the triangle and mastery and profitability, and you talked about ego. what do you think ego is doing to people? And what's your relationship with your own ego, if I may?
Of course.
Because I think that's a constant struggle for us.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say for most, the ego is a protector. Your ego is protecting you usually from hard truths and or things that you're not ready to see yet. So for most people, it's protecting them. But I think for a lot of people, it's protecting them from the truths they actually need. They just don't know that they need yet. So this is the example I use. I was working out, and I'll connect this to my ego. I was working out in the gym with Alan, my business partner, and somebody else that we knew. And in the gym, I'm very confident. I have a lot of reps there. I just have years of experience in the gym. I feel good there. During the workout, I'm great. 10 out of 10, confident, loving it. After the workout, we're sitting in the gym and we transitioned to talking about business. And this was early in my journey. I immediately get super insecure. Then I start to villainize Alan and our other friend because how dare you know more about business than I and make me feel insecure. My ego, my protector, the thing that keeps me safe, tried to keep me safe by villainizing two other humans, when in reality, what my ego needed to do was go vulnerable and say, oh my goodness, in this moment, I'm starting to realize that I don't understand enough about business. And if I want to get on their level and belong, I need to get a little bit better with business. So early in the beginning for me, the ego was, I'll be louder, I'll be stronger, I'll be faster, I'm better. That's my ego. My protector was, you're not on my level. My protector now usually says, what piece of vulnerability do you need to adopt here? What piece of awareness, what piece of actuality do you need to find in order to get the correct answer to make this work? A lot of people, their ego is protecting them, and that's okay. But the way it protects you might not be serving the ultimate goals that you're trying to accomplish.
Oh, that was that was something. That was something. It's so deep, so deep. I would love to stay here for like 3 hours about this ego thing, and thinking about, the ultimate goal of our ego. And yeah, I want you to, I just want to share with you something about the ego part with respect to my own reality.
Mm.
I think many times, I constantly struggle with ego issues. Sometimes I feel like many choices that I made was driven by my sort of, not ego-centered, but trying just to protect myself from a place of suffering and sorrow and pain. And most of the time, that is incredibly impairing my career, my life. That ego that's so desperate trying to protect myself from sorrow is actually worsening that sorrow. It's actually getting me into another spiral of anxiety and fear, and that is to me something that bothers me all the time. Not into my daily life, but I struggle just to think about that, because I can feel when you get into that cycle, that vicious cycle about anxiety provoking thoughts. That anxiety provoking thoughts, it's making you avoid or dodge some bullets, some situation that can really impair you and really damage you, or maybe that's the worst part, damage your reputation, worse than your physical health, for example. And that's a problem to me. Many people are thinking about their reputation too much. And yesterday I was listening to David Boss, for example, great evolutionary psychologist. It was talking about, the difference between men and women, and how they relate to one another. And he was saying, one of the best way that women tend to have to, let's say, damage the others is by emotional damage towards their reputation. And that thought was making me think more, about this whole thing about reputation, because reputation is clearly linked to ego. Yeah. Reputation is our ego issue, and this is even, cranked it up in the volume when we think about social media. And that's why I'm so concerned for younger generations, you know. And now I want you to say something about this. I'm feeling so damn worried for them. I'm feeling that this new generation has lots of different opportunities. Man, how couldn't that be? You know, how we were raised in another area. You know, you're a little bit older or wiser than me. Let's put it like that. Let's reframe it like that. But still, you know, we were born in an era in which, you know, a more analogical era. Let's say like that, less digital era. But now that everything is basically online, and every moves you do, every little move you do on your social media can really be used against you like 10 years afterwards. That's mind-boggling to me. So what's the kind of advice that you would give to a 15-year-old that came to you and saying, well, Kevin, just help me out. I really cannot connect with myself, and I'm struggling a lot with, usually with purpose. I think I know that's a little bit spiritual and spiritual, but I just want you to say, you know, a 15-year-old that probably doesn't belong exactly what is actually doing, and the position in which he's stuck. You know, he's probably studying, but he doesn't want to study, probably, you know, and you don't know exactly what you want to pursue in life. How could that boy or girl, of course, can develop some sense, some deeper sense about moving towards something? So setting a goal. So what would you be recommending to them?
I would keep it unreasonably simple. And this is the reason why. I think a lot of us want all of the answers to all of life's problems all at once, and most of us, myself included, are not capable of understanding and or putting them into practice. We're not aware enough to put them into implementation, and that puts you in a weird place. I would literally say this: what do you want to study? Let's start there. What do you want to study? Because I remember when I was 15 years old, people who studied and played video games were considered losers. Now they're millionaires, and they're literally the biggest thing on YouTube, and esports is this giant thing. I would try to lead them by saying, well, if you could do anything, what would it be? What would it be? What fulfills you? What lights you up? When are you the happiest? I don't think you have to do what everybody else is doing. I don't think you should do what everybody else is doing. I don't think everybody should do the same thing, because most people aren't meant to do that. The advice I would give is let your imagination work for a little bit, because eventually people are going to tell you that your imagination is dumb, and it's not. Their imagination is just different than yours. I'm telling you, most of the people who told me I couldn't be a professional podcaster, they weren't podcasters, and they don't listen to podcasts. They were just giving me their fears and saying, well, I couldn't do it if I was you. That's okay. Maybe you shouldn't be doing what I'm doing. The advice I would give is that let your imagination lead you for a little bit. And then I would also say this: don't post anything on social media that you don't want your parents to see, or that you don't want somebody in 10 years to see, because it's never going to go away. And
that's a very good thing, huh? That's
it's very serious. It's very serious.
It's because you know, most of the time, and unfortunately I'm guilty of that too, you know, sometimes, you know, we just this ultimate machine of attention seeking, you know, trying to getting attention as much as we can. And I'm just a regular human being. So I think back at, I know 2-3 years ago, I was posting something. I said, what the fuck I was thinking at, you know, really, that was something to me that was why
significance.
Yeah, but you know, and the more you think, and there was a reason for that.
Yeah,
people don't just, you know, post something for the sake of posting. You know, that's something deeper. You know, there's psychology in there. So there's the reason why you're trying to seek, for example, attention, or, you know, you're making something in order to get something else. So yes, it's unbelievably difficult to frame that conversation, that discussion. And I think that advice you gave, it was, I would have really tried to get along with that, you know, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. If someone like you came to me and said, well, please don't post anything that you don't want to be seen like in 10 years or from your parents. That would be great advice. I would have to jot that down. So yes, definitely, definitely yes. And well, Kevin,
Yes.
that's a struggling part, you know. I want you to getting back a little bit to, unfortunately, I'm sorry for that, but I had to. I want you to describe for a moment that
Mm.
that place of sorrow, that place of deep pain that you went through. This, if you can describe it as clearly as you can, you know, for our audience to just become aware of the great power that the human mind can have, you know, on ourselves, because you were deep down there. You were deep down in a very complicated place.
Yep.
And somehow you found something, not only within yourself, because you said, because also because of the quality of the people you were surrounding yourself with. That's for sure. But try to clue us in a little bit at how deep that sorrow was, how deep that pain was, you know, when that morning that you talked about, you know, when you woke up and there was that 10 televisors, you know, televisions, you know, on in your mind. What was actually going through? What were you feeling? What were you feeling that moment? It was
Yeah.
pain, sorrow, anxiety, fears. What was that?
I think the biggest thing that I was feeling was lack of options, lack of awareness, lack of clarity. Yeah, lack of options. I felt trapped. I felt stuck. I felt hopeless. I didn't feel like I had a bright future. And even if I did, I had no idea how to get there. And I think as humans, we have to have a few beliefs to take new actions. We must believe it's humanly possible. We must believe it is possible for us, and we must believe it is worth it. I didn't necessarily believe any of those. I didn't think a new life was possible for me. And I didn't know how it would be worth it. I'm going to go from making all this money to none. I don't know how I'm going to do that. I think the easiest word would be hopeless. I just couldn't see beyond what I was currently seeing. There was no light at the end of the tunnel. The tunnel was blocked. There was no way of seeing the light. But that's what Alan helped me do, is he helped me see the light. Well, what if you just did this? I think that's it in the simplest form. Hopeless, stuck, trapped, without options. That's the best way to put it.
That's well, that's so intense, Kevin. First of all, thank you for sharing it, because I know that's so difficult to do it, you know, publicly, and you know, you're a public figure, but still, you know, it's something that's not pleasant to share. You know, it's always reframe and relive in a sort of way, you know, that moments are always something so difficult for every single one of us. So thank you very much for sharing this with me and with the audience. And you know, just if you can, you know, take away one lesson that you learned from that moment of incredible pain, but mostly, you know, what I'm hearing, it was like you were feeling trapped. There's this the recurrent use of this word, you know. Feeling trapped is a bad place to live. It's a bad place to be. So what would it be like the very one thing that you want to take away from that lesson, you know, that feeling of sorrow and pain, but mostly of feeling trapped? What did you learn that day? What did you learn in that morning?
I think I learned that there's usually signs long before the crash. We just don't either recognize them or pay attention to them. Because I was miserable for that entire year before that happened.
Incredible. Yes.
That's what I would say. It's
totally
to our original point. Usually it gets to a point of it crosses a threshold of pain. And then the necessity is high enough to make a new decision. That's what it taught me. I got all the way to hell no. And when you go all the way to hell no, there's nowhere else to go but hell yes. And that's what ended up happening.
That's Wow, that's incredible, man. I think that's a real striking point. You know, you touch something that I think that's so damn powerful. You know, the crash is predictable.
Usually.
The crash is somehow predictable. You don't want to look at it, but it's happening.
Yeah.
And it's coming for you. You know, and that's, to me, you want to be really aware of where you're going. And I think that most people strike with that, you know, and struggle with that a lot. You know, they see they're going down the route, let's say, at the painful path, you know, but they don't want to look at it. They're too scared. They're too damn scared of just getting the grasp of this, the heaviness of that situation, you know, they're involved in. We can apply this to relationship, to, you know, because, you know, it takes courage. It takes courage to look at it. You want to be brave. You want to be brave like a lion, even more than a lion, you know. Gaze into the abyss, as, you know, Jordan Peterson beautifully framed. It's something that really is dangerous. It's really dangerous. And if you do it unconsciously, that can kill you. That can kill you very badly. But if you look at where you're going in a constructive way, well, then there lies your power. Because there is the place to be. There's the place to start from, to rebuild your own self. That was, to me, something that really helped me, and you framed beautifully with that parallelism that you shared with us. And now, coming to a conclusion, and I really thank you for everything, Kevin. I want you just to, if you would have a last little advice for our audience, and I'm not saying, I would say, you know, I would love to make my guests, you know, sort of, let's say, this kind of chain, you know, of empowerment for others, you know. So if you would love to start with, and I would really be honored to be to starting with you. So if you were having your last hour of your entire life, what would that be? The one, I know, I don't want you to say 3, 5, 10. No. We don't want that. We don't any of that. I want you to really get to the one, narrow down your spectrum, and just get me the one thing. What would you advise if you were into a really dark spot? If you were thinking about taking your own life, what would that Kevin Palmieri would say to that person?
The simplest thing would be ask for help. Ask for help. That's it in a nutshell, because nothing I could possibly say contextually or specifically could help that person more than them asking somebody that they trust for help. That's what I would say.
Definitely. Oh, I cannot emphasize this more. You know, I'm huge proponent, huge believer of seeking help. Well, that was intense, Kevin. So thank you.
Of course, buddy.
That was really intense. I want you really to. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for this interview. I'm so grateful to have come across your work. An amazing team you have put up, and you're building something that I think, I really believe that you're improving many lives. You're improving from a place of surrender. You know, you were down a really downward spiral, and you faced even I think something worse than death itself. Feeling trapped, I think it's worse than death itself. That feeling of hopelessness, it's even worse than facing your own reality. And so thank you very much for sharing everything. It was my incredible pleasure to have you, ladies and gentlemen, Kevin Palmieri. Thank you so much. I really hope, I'm looking forward to have you a second time. I would be glad. I would
Of
be
course.
even, I hope that I can even bring some new technicalities here, because it's like dark, but still okay. Kevin, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to have another chat with you, and please keep going on with that route. You're
Of
doing an
course.
amazing job, and I think the people would love to hear more from you. And one last thing, if my audience wants to connect with you, how can they get in touch with you with some, with some coaching, so personal coaching, or even just, for the sake of social media?
Yeah, I always tell people to listen to the podcast. That'll give you a good idea if you do want to coach with us. If not, the podcast is the best place to start. So Next Level University, we're on all the podcast platforms as well as YouTube. And then the best place to reach out to me is on Instagram. My handle is @NeverQuitKid. Shoot me a message, questions, comments, anything you need. I'm happy to be there for you.
Fantastic, Kevin. Thank you so much. And really, I really appreciate it and enjoyed every single minute of this conversation. Thank you so much, ladies and
Of
gentlemen.
course.
Kevin Palmieri again, and see you soon, brother. It was my own pleasure.
Thank
Really,
you, my
really that
friend.
much.
I appreciate it.